All right. Welcome aboard to what is our final session. We've been together for the last three sessions, and all of the sessions have been very participative and very interesting. It's been interactive. We've received a great deal of feedback, comments, things of that nature. So it's been an exciting process learning a bit about public policy research and analysis. And as the topic suggests, public policy research and analysis, um, while we have tried to hit on a few notions, aspects of the research process, what we have tried to do is keep it conceptual from the standpoint of public policy analysis. So what Swati covered yesterday, interpretative policy analysis is an analytic process. Okay. And that's not to suggest that it's outside of research, because that's the last but one final process of any research endeavor. Because you're collecting data, then what do you do with the data? You have to analyze data. Then what do you do after you've analyzed data? You interpret it, and then you make sense of it. Then you write about it. I write your findings or whatever about it. So what we've tried to do is, in the four sessions, we've tried to remain somewhat high level, somewhat taking a fundamental approach to this entire gamut of research. And we provided you some really reliable sources, papers. I've sent you the document on situational analysis. I'll also upload it to the online folder. We've also sent you previously that entire SAGE book, handbook on interpretative policy analysis by Yanao Duo, I forget her name. And that's a really reliable text too. So you have a lot of material. So I'm hoping that you don't stop your learning at the end of today's session, that you actually continue learning, continue growing, continue interacting. And hopefully some of you will use the techniques that you've learned, or at least give it a shot as you are interested with public policy research and analysis. So Swati is going to join me today in the co-facilitation of this segment. So we're going to go back and forth. Um, she'll have obviously something from her own perspective to add to this. And I would also hope that you guys remain active throughout the process. And given that this is the last session, and also more importantly, that we are a small group, so there's no issue about, you can just raise your hand, and or if you forget to raise your hand, you want to add something to the dialogue, unmute yourself, right, Swati? And you unmute yourself and say something. So I want this to be an interactive process, because situational analysis is also a very rigorous methodology. It actually comes from the field of grounded theory. Um, and so it was traditional grounded theory that Adele Clark, who was really the one that developed situational analysis, or the situation of inquiry, she took it a step further and brought in a social constructivist approach, that all reality is socially constructed in the social world, within the social system. So please take a chance, take a risk, jump in. There are no right or wrong answers. We're all learning together, including Swati and myself. And as a matter of fact, we learn when you talk and you share something from your perspectives or your unique jobs, or think tank participation, or whatever else you're doing with public policy. So with that, let me start with just some fundamental concepts of situational analysis. It's called mapping research with grounded theory, and we'll get to that in a second. So situational analysis, also the acronym that we use for situational analysis, is SA. Okay. It acknowledges the messiness of doing research. Now, this is not music to the ears of a quantitative research. You talk to a quantitative research, they want everything methodologically done in a highly structured manner. If you talk about messiness in research, they feel that off-putting. They want everything organized, right? All the data to be organized, laid out with, you know, mathematical, statistical analysis and things of that nature. So messiness is not a concept that you're going to hear a lot of within quantitative research. On the other hand, messiness is something that you will hear a lot of in qualitative research. Qualitative research is a very messy process. So by messy, I want to understand from the participants here, what do I mean when I say messy? What is messy? What is messy about the process? Is it dirty? Is it untouchable? Is it difficult to handle? What do we mean when we say messy?
Tanmay, do you want to unmute yourself and share?
Yes, so I believe messiness here means the plurality of subjective factors that there are in this form of research.
Mm-hmm.
So compiling them and giving them order to give them meaning.
Yeah. Say a bit more about this plurality. Say a bit more about the plurality.
Oh yeah, definitely. So there's there are interpretations of the researcher, which are the primary things, and then the studies that they conduct, how that particular study or research undertaken is being received by the subjects of that study. So these are the factors that I can think of at hand right now. So so there are so many things which are subjective, which cannot be rationalized for every subject of the research. So hence, to put it in a very bland term, is the word messiness or messy used here, I think.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, you got to remember that human emotions are messy. There is no such thing as a very structured human emotion. You just don't know. One moment somebody may be smiling and laughing, and you said something that really triggers something within that person, and the person next moment is crying. Right? So there's no real structure to human emotions. Human emotions are very fleeting, they're very ephemeral, they are difficult sometimes to comprehend, to understand. Like somebody may be totally silent, and we may project our own issues, our own biases into someone's silence, and hermeneutically understand that silence to mean something. And then when you ask that person, what was your silence really trying to tell us? She comes up with something quite different. So there is not one way of looking at it. There's a multiplicity of understanding. There's a multiplicity of approaches when we are looking at this, of human emotions. And I say emotions, but I also mean feelings, attitudes, subjectivity, right? All of those things. So Resham and Chesta have raised their hand. Go ahead.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So when you talked about messiness, if I try to look at it from the point of view of a literature student, what I can think of is messiness is what Derrida would call a play of differences. So I think there is a coexisting of sorts of different aspects or of opposite things at the same time. So there
Okay,
is no
when you
black and white, rather the, so I think that is seen as well.
you're talking about Derrida, right? Jacques Derrida.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. The guy who is that we attribute deconstruction to.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, excellent. I'd done about 6 months ago. I facilitated um, a um, a session on Derrida's deconstruction, and it's used in analysis. It's on my YouTube channel. You can certainly go into my YouTube channel, and I'll share the link with everybody, so you guys can go into the channel and look it up. But yes, we have that. So yeah. So anybody else that would like to say something about this?
So I
Why
feel
is
that
Yeah? Go ahead.
so I feel that messiness here means that the process of qualitative research is not linear, that the discussions we have are very spontaneous, which
Hmm.
are both for the interviewer and the interviewer. And
Right.
while in the quantitative research, it's more structured. In that sense, it's messy that you don't have a straight path towards the process.
Ah, nice, nice. They got that lot of stuff that happens in qualitative research is very emergent. Okay, it's very novel. It's emerging. It's constantly changing because you cannot put a finger on something and say that it's going to be step A, step B, step C, step D. You may be at step B and you may have to jump to step D, or you may be at step D and go back to examine step A. So you're constantly going back and forth. And also there's a great deal of convergence and divergence. And if you were doing a quantitative research, you're only looking for convergences in your questionnaire or only looking for divergences in your questionnaire. And even if your questionnaire makes room for convergences and divergences, which it can, that's where it stops. It stops with the numeric data. Whereas in qualitative research, you make sense of that data. You try to understand what meaning structures people are attributing to those numbers that they're given. And that's why it's sometimes very rich to do a mixed method research where you have the quantitative data, but you also do in-depth semi-structured interviews with some other respondents to get their thoughts, feelings, emotions, perceptions about something. Anybody else? What is the messiness? It's very important to understand the messiness in qualitative research.
Like the previous candidate mentioned, saying that it could be due to the non-linear data collection. I would like to add that it could be because one second, unstructured data that we get from the research perspective. There's a lot of
Mhm.
data when we do qualitative research, so it could be
Yes.
unstructured. We need to structure it in a proper way to get the
Mhm.
results.
Mhm.
So that could be the messiness that comes with qualitative research.
So the complexity, because it's
The complexity and unstructured data, we have a lot of data that we collect, so
yeah,
that could be the messiness,
and
which is
and
not
and,
which
and
is not likely, yes,
no, go ahead, speak.
which is very unlikely in quantitative research because that is very structured in a way, while in qualitative it's just otherwise.
Right. And what happens is you make a very good point because the data that you're collecting is voluminous. It is intricate. It is disjointed. A conversation with a participant doesn't always flow in a certain linear way. You could be talking about their mom and suddenly she starts talking about her boyfriend. You could be talking about the boyfriend, they start talking about cricket. You get onto the topic of cricket and they go into some other area. It's a free flowing interview. That's why we call it semi-structured and in-depth. So as a researcher, your role is to keep them focused on the one hand and allow for emergence and creativity to come out on the other hand. So how do you do this balance between allowing them the freedom to say what they want, but not so much freedom that they keep going off tangent, right? How do we balance that? It's a messy process. It's a messy process for the researcher. It's a very messy process for the participant as well, because you're trying to say, can you talk to me about such and such? What is it like to be emotionally abused? Let's say, I'm just taking an example, a qualitative study example. What is it like to be emotionally abused? Or what is it like to live and work with an abusive marriage, right? So I'm asking this person a very sensitive question, but I'm looking for thick data. Thick means emotional, emotionally laden, pathos-filled data. And so when you ask a sensitive question like that, you have to have the capacity, the propensity as a researcher to be able to hold those emotions. So first, the person, she or he, may not be willing to talk about those experiences, right? So how do you then bring forth those experiences in a manner that you can look at them somewhat objectively? That's the hard process. That's the messy process in research. That's not easy to do. So when you're researching using a qualitative methodology, you're always open to surprise. You're always open to speculation. You cannot say, and nor should you say in your paper or research, that this is what happened, right? Or this is what came about. You can, on the other hand, say, this is what I speculate, that this is something that might be happening to this person, because you just don't know what is truly happening to that person. What is the person feeling? What is the person emoting? So that's where the messiness comes in big time, okay? And your capacity as a researcher, you are tested as a qualitative research by your capacity to hold those complex emotions in a manner that you collect enough data, because your goal as a researcher is to collect data that is as close as possible to the research phenomena. All right. So does anybody else want to share anything on that?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, sir. Regarding this messiness that while doing a qualitative research, I feel the pressure is more heightened when you do research in your own society. Definitely, doing a qualitative research itself is quite difficult. But when you are a researcher, you're an insider and a researcher in your own society. I think at that moment when I was doing qualitative research for my dissertation, I felt that I have sometimes the laid back attitude is that I know everything about my society. And
Mhm.
and in that process, I sometimes feel that this is very normal to me and it's very conventional in our society. And
Mhm.
what happen, and even if I try to collect as much that I somehow in the back of mind, I feel that this will not be that convincing to the reader, because I feel I know about it and that's it. So sometimes I already have a biasness towards what is convincing and what is not at all convincing. So that insider's perspective that you have while doing your qualitative research in your own society, that burdens you more when you are doing a research in your own society, and that's add to the messiness. Already you have to collect a lot of data for sure, which
Mhm.
is dealing with human emotions, but and when you're doing it in your own society, it it somehow it burdens you more because you feel you know everything, and then you start
Mhm.
discarding the most valuable data that you have, and then it creates challenge, and then it messes up more. So when you
Yeah,
come
yeah,
from a yeah,
yeah. So who is this talking right now?
so it's Kritika here.
Kritika. Okay, okay. You also put something in the chat that you were having some connectivity issues, correct?
Sure, yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. It seems that that was resolved. No, you bring in a very important aspect to this. Very, very important because, you know, you first of all, if you're doing 10 interviews, I'm just taking the example of 10. Typically in research studies, you do more than 10. But if you're doing 10
Mhm,
in-depth, semi-structured interviews, you're looking at almost 150 to 200 pages when you do the transcribing of the interviews. If your interviews
mhm,
were lasting about 90 minutes, right? It's a
mhm,
long process. It's a long process because when you do the transcription, you'll find that you have to record everything, the the ha, the nods of the head. So it's a really intricate, messy process. And how do you
yes,
then
sir.
make sense? How do you interpret those emotions and feelings that people are having, right? It's a hard job. It's very, very tough, right? So I'm glad that we had this conversation because I wanted to touch upon the messiness of qualitative research because as long as you guys understand that it's not the same as doing quantitative research, it's a different process you follow, different methodology you follow. So the situation of inquiry is the fundamental unit of the analytic process. What is the situation of inquiry? Did anyone read that? Did anyone read? What is this thing called situation of inquiry? It's not that complicated. Even if you didn't read it, inquiry means research, right? So when you're starting a process of research or a technique or a methodology or a strategy, you have to have some fundamental unit of research on which you will analyze stuff. So in situational analysis, that fundamental unit of analysis is the situation of inquiry, or SOI, situation of inquiry. Nothing really complicated about that. What you're saying is you're looking at a situation. What is the current situation? Like when those of you that are consulting to organizations or consulting to groups, the group has a presenting problem, or even if you're doing individual coaching, there's always a presenting problem. The presenting problem is nothing but what is the pain that the client is feeling, right? On which you can focus your analysis on, focus your attention on. So the situation of inquiry encompasses and encapsulates the researcher's assumptions, actions, and conceptualizations. Now, what is different in this approach, which is a qualitative approach, as opposed to a quantitative approach, is those assumptions, actions, and conceptualizations of the researcher are initially set aside by the researcher until the data is all collected, right? And even when the data is collected, the data is made sense of as though in a very, shall we say, in a highly objective way. What the researcher tries to do in a quantitative study is to reduce the impact of subjectivity. Because the notion there is that you don't want the subjectivity to contaminate the data, contaminate the process. On the other hand, in qualitative approaches such as this, and it's a highly qualitative approach that we're talking about, the situation analysis, the researcher brings in all of those assumptions, all of those actions, all of the conceptualizations, all of the understandings, the misunderstandings about a certain situation. Everything is free, everything is game, everything is open to research. So you bring in as much data as you possibly can relating to the researcher's biases, assumptions, actions, conceptualizations. The researcher remains front and center stage, not hidden or obscured by the data, such as in quantitative studies. So in quant studies, the researcher sometimes takes a backstage. In this case, the researcher is front and center stage. The researcher doesn't hide behind the data, unlike quantitative studies. Every piece of research develops within a particular situation. So all of the data that you collect is data pertaining to a situation. So let's take the example of any public policy. The public policy has been framed to address what? To address a certain situation, right? So it's a policy around social justice, policy of, let's say, demonetization, which happened some years ago in India, created a big upheaval, right? I remember I was there in India at the time, visiting, and what a nightmare it was. And yet, in a country of 1.2 billion people, it somehow went through, even though there was a lot of pain and trials and tribulations and people not getting their money. There was a ceiling put on how much money you could take out per day. So with all of the complexities of such a huge population, where India, I have some reasoning to believe that 65 to 70% of the entire demographics is rural, right? And within that, to bring everybody together, Mr. Modi was able to bring this very controversial demonetization policy for whatever reasons they were brought from. But if we were to look at that policy, we would look at what situation, not just the policy per se. What were the breakpoints of the policy? What were the policy ABCs of the policy? But what was the situation? Why was that policy instituted in the first place? And I think all of you know the answer to that. It was to counteract, it was to combat the corruption that was going on, the black money that was circulating, right? So if you look at that situation, and I'm just taking this hypothetical situation, we look at that situation, what is it about that situation that we want to analyze? If we were analyzing the demonetization policy some years ago, what was it about the situation? So everything that you're looking at insofar as the situation is concerned becomes data for you. So Kritika, you raised your hand, go ahead. Kritika, can you hear us? Okay, maybe not. Her hand was raised, so I was wondering what's going
I
on.
think that's from earlier when she had
Oh,
shared with us.
oh, okay. Then she can lower her hand, otherwise it's misleading. Because
Yeah,
Kritika, if you
I'll
just
lower
want to
her
lower,
hand.
yeah, you can just lower.
I'll
Oh,
lower.
there you go. There you go. There you go. Excellent. So, does anybody, Swati, would you like to share anything here?
So yeah, here when I was also thinking about how in qualitative research, particularly in policy analysis,
Mm-hmm,
the situatedness of the researcher plays a huge role as well. So,
mm-hmm,
for instance, I was thinking about the thesis or dissertation that we were discussing yesterday, and
mm-hmm,
how if the same study was being done by, let's say, a white male researcher from Sweden, like
mm-hmm,
from a global north country, versus if the same research was being done by a Dalit researcher from rural Chhattisgarh,
mm,
how the research, everything, so the research, right from the research design to the research methods being used, to you also to the findings, all of
yeah.
them would kind of be different. All of them, all of these things would have the mark of the researcher.
Mm-hmm,
So, which is why even in situational analysis also,
mm-hmm,
where the researcher is situated, how the researcher conceptualizes certain, and makes meaning out of certain concepts and terms, all of that becomes so important. And that is something like a positivist study or a quantitative study will never be able to capture adequately.
exactly, exactly. So, so just remember that Adele Clark, who was the one who developed situation analysis as an extension of traditional grounded theory. Traditional grounded theory had some elements of positivism in that, even though it was an inductive, qualitative approach. Adele Clark tried to reduce that positivity, actually totally mute that positivity, okay, and take a totally interpretative focus, look at it from an interpretative lens. And that's what makes it both challenging and also very, very interesting and novel. So let me go to the next slide. Again, continued, it deploys an interpretative approach, which I was just talking about, that is rigorous and pays attention to both what is hidden and what is manifest. So this is something that is of great interest to researchers. So what is happening in that situation of inquiry, in that policy when we're looking at? That is so obvious, right? That is on the surface, obvious, manifest, everybody can see it, but also what is hidden in there, what is not being talked about. There is the elephant under the table, right? The elephant in the room, that everybody knows there's something amiss, but nobody wants to discuss that, because discussing the undiscussable, right, is not an easy task. People want to avoid that. But in situation of inquiry, you deliberately, intentionally focus your attention on what might be some hidden factors as they relate to the situation of inquiry about a policy. Given its grounded theory underpinning, because the whole base, the whole foundation of situation analysis is grounded theory. And of course, it is outside the scope of this session to go into an in-depth um, treatment of grounded theory. I've done many courses on grounded theory, just basically on grounded theory. So please just know that grounded theory was a new approach in qualitative, a new inductive approach in qualitative studies developed by Glaser and Strauss. I believe it was in 1964 or 1966, something like that, maybe 1964. So Glaser and Strauss were heavily influenced by the fact that there was not much qualitative studies out there, and that everything was positivist, everything was quantitative, right? So given its grounded theory underpinning, and grounded theory meaning you're either trying to construct a new theory or to refine and examine an existing theory. So in so far as our purpose is concerned, the use of grounded theory is to evaluate, to assess, to analyze, to interpret a given theory. We are doing an analysis of the theory, almost like a meta-analysis of a theory, right? To see its efficacy, to see whether it's working, not working, right? So we use a grounded theory approach to do that. And grounded theory, unlike many of the other qualitative approaches such as phenomenology, grounded theory is heavily focused on theoretical constructs. Why? Because the entire thing about grounded theory is about theory, right? And what is it grounded in? It is always grounded in data. The word grounded theory means theory that is grounded in data. And what is the data? The data is what you're collecting through interviews, through observations, through reports, non-human elements. And while it does take the traditional approach, it takes a socially constructivist approach of Kathy Sharma's. So it adds both elements. It adds an interpretative element to it, and also adds a social constructivist element, that all reality is what we create together, what is socially created in a system. It attempts to understand the nuances of meaning, not just meaning per se, or meaning as such, the nuances of meaning, the intricate parts of meaning. If you were to tear meaning apart, what is it that you really get in that meaning? What does meaning mean to a stakeholder, right? Versus what is the meaning of this policy? The meaning of this policy is to demonetize. Why demonetization? Because there was a lot of black money circulating in the system, and he wanted to get rid of that, right? But what are some of the nuances of that meaning? So in order to dig deeper into that, you have to have a slightly different approach. And what is hidden, tacit, and obscured in the discourse? So if it's a discourse that's going on, it's an interview text or whatever you're reading, reports, documents, journal articles, or whatever you're reading, what is obscured, what is hidden, what is tacit, unseen in that discourse? So you have to become sort of like a detective, like an investigator. And that's the hard part. Because everybody can look at data, manifestly say, okay, this is what the data suggests or not suggests. But when you become an archaeologist and dig deeper into that, that's where the skill lies. Okay. So situational analysis further develops Ansel Strauss's, Glaser and Strauss. Anselm Strauss had a pragmatic approach to grounded theory, a very pragmatic, very structured approach to grounded theory, which oftentimes left the social out of that. He was focused on the processes, he was focused on the construction, on the theories, but he left that social part from it. So Kathy Sharma brings that social part into it. And Adele Clark takes it one step further and creates this situational inquiry or situational analysis out of that. Okay. And I've already sent you guys that book. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal piece. Takes a while, 384 pages or something, but start to read bits and pieces of that. Start with the introduction to understand. And most of what I'm saying is attributed here to Adele C. Clark. See, I've provided attribution right at the bottom, right? All I've done is paraphrased from her text, but the credit goes to Adele Clark and Associates, because you'll see that book. As you read that book, I've actually highlighted, made it easier for you guys to focus in on certain paragraphs. Okay. So what is situational analysis? I mean, we've talked about the basic fundamental aspects of situational analysis, but what is situational analysis? What does it do? How do we mobilize it? So situational analysis is an extension of grounded theory, perhaps one of the most popular yet complex qualitative research methods. That's obvious. It was developed in 1967 by Glaser and Strauss, and more contemporary formulation by IITs from a constructivist approach refined by Kathy Sharmas. The GT, or grounded theory, has sociological roots. It developed out of sociology. And I know some, if not all of you, have at least some little or more background in sociology. And it covers a wide range of fields such as nursing, management studies, organization studies, education, computer information sciences. And I've not forgotten the gentleman here and right here who had talked about operations research. I've reached out to a couple of my colleagues, Devender, for specific papers, ideas, research stuff on operations research. So as soon as I get something, I'll share it with you. All right, sir. So unlike traditional grounded theory, situational analysis pays attention to researcher reflexivity. Can anybody tell me what we mean by researcher reflexivity? It's a very, very important construct in not only situational analysis, but also in qualitative research, generally speaking. What do we mean by researcher reflexivity? Anyone? What do we mean by researcher reflexivity? Anyone?
Anmay, do you want to unmute yourself and share?
Sir, I believe perhaps it means that what is the first reaction? What is the first mental reflex to a particular situation that a researcher faces? So, as the research goes on, as more facts unveil, the interpretation might change, the observations might build up better. But on the very first instance of a particular situation, what is the opinion of the researcher in that situation?
Okay, you're partially correct. I mean, you hit upon that. But what is this thing called reflexivity? It still doesn't answer the question, what is reflexivity? At a very basic level, it is the involvement of a researcher in the process of research. I'll give you that hint. So when a researcher is getting involved, deeply involved in the process of researcher, does the researcher not have any of his or own attitudes, feelings, biases, prejudices, frameworks, interpretations of something? Feelings about something, feelings about the research process, feelings about the phenomena or whatever. So in quant, we keep those researchers' perceptions, attitudes, feelings, biases, keep them aside. We do not let them come into the research process, because the notion is, if you allow them to come into the research process, the researcher would corrupt, contaminate the research. So you want to keep that away in an objective sense, but not in this, not in qualitative research. In qualitative research, the reader wants to know what the researcher was going through. What are researchers' own feelings about that, own attitudes about that phenomena, about that research? What is or not happening to the researcher as the researchers? What were the assumptions of the researcher? And were those assumptions correct? Or was something else happening there? So when we talk about researcher reflexivity, it's both the unwitting and witting, means unconscious, also unconscious, but out of awareness, things that are happening, which the researcher brings to the research study and says, this is what I'm feeling. And it's important to address those, because it is a process of co-creation, unlike in quantitative studies. The researcher and the participant are co-creating this research. Yes, Kirtana.
No, I just rejoined, sir, because it got disconnected in between. That's
Okay,
what
now
it,
you have
that's
to
why it
talk,
was on unmute.
because you rejoined, so now you have to talk.
Yes, sir.
So what do you have
I
to say?
missed in between. I missed
Okay,
in between,
so,
like for 3 to 4 minutes.
Okay, so I'll fill you in on that. All right, so researcher reflexivity we were talking about. What is this thing called researcher reflexivity, Kirtana?
I didn't follow this, sir.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot, but try to understand what researcher reflexivity really is. It's the
Sure, sir.
attitudes of the researcher. We are saying researcher reflexivity. If you look up reflexivity, just even as we were talking, one of you could have just looked it up on Google, and you will find out what researcher reflexivity really means. It's not that complicated.
Yes, sir, got it.
Got it? Okay, so what did you get?
Yes, yes, sir. So it's basically examining your own judgments, practices, and belief systems during the qualitative research.
There you go. Examining your own beliefs, attitudes, perceptions, biases, as they may or may not be impacting the research. This examination, this self-discussion, self-talk that the researcher is having with himself or herself is very important. It's a very important exposition. has a lot of bearing, has a lot of meaning in qualitative research. Okay, all right, so great. Multiplicity of perspectives, everybody knows, differences of opinion. So all of that stuff becomes the domain of situational analysis. And you might ask, multiplicity of perspective, research reflexivity, differences of opinion, you're making it all freaking so dirty, so contaminated, so messy. भाई आप अपने पैर पे कुल्हाड़ी क्यों मार रही हैं? Right? Why create more messiness? क्यों भाई simplify कर दो, messy क्यों करने की जरूरत है? Why do we make qualitative research so messy, and especially situational analysis? Yeah, Swati, why do we make it so messy? Simplify कर दो ना, क्या बात है?
I don't think researchers have the capacity to simplify something that is this vast and complicated. I think, yeah,
I
we
think I
can't
think
simplify it.
I think we can't simplify. As a matter of fact, we make things more complex
Yeah.
because we feel that the more complex, the more nuances, the more theories and all that bombastic language we have, that the more impressed people will be, right?
Yeah, the smarter we sound, the
The
more
smarter
we
we sound,
complicate
the
things.
smarter we sound. But actually, is that what the lay person is looking for? No. I'm telling you, some of the finest research studies I've seen are written in such simple language that even a fifth grader reaching it, I'm just exaggerating, but let's say a 10th grader, 11th grader, 12th grader reading it can make some sense out of it. अरे भाई वो research का काम ही क्या है कि only the researchers sitting in ivory towers are going to be able to make sense. बाकी सब it is outside the domain of everybody. Everybody else is forbidden inside that door. You cannot walk through that door because you have to have that to be coveted to walk through that door. No, that's not what research is about. That is why one of the reasons, Swati, is that so many research studies of repute, so much rigorous, are just sitting there rotting in the cyber pile. किसी ने पढ़ा नहीं है. Nobody reads it because it's so very complicated. First,
I
you
also
read the
think,
first few pages you read and you say, oh my God, I'm not reading any more of this. You know, I'll
yeah,
give you a quick example. They'll do the introduction of a research study, right? Introduction. The introduction, first few sentences or first 5 sentences are full of citations, references from other people. अरे भाई, वो ठीक है, but पहले तुमको क्या, at least you share with the reader what you're researching in your own active voice. Before talking about, oh, Watkins and Strauss said this, or this one said, what did you say? Is this your research or their research? What does Swati have to say about this? Right? The reader wants to know your words, your interpretation, your language. They want to hear. And I'm not saying that there's no place for references and all that. It's all there. But you have to build on that. You have to support your ideas using references, not using references to do your entire study. That's why they say, even if you have a good idea that was not yours, it was attributed to somebody else, you put it in your own words and use paraphrasing. And at the end of the chapter, at the end of whatever, you give the attribution and the references to that author. End of story. So this thing that we are talking about is so critical here that rather than simplifying something, we complexify. But here's the thing, here's the kicker. Unlike in traditional grounded theory, where there's a process of simplification, In situational analysis, the researcher brings in a great deal of reflexivity, multiplicity of perspectives, differences, divergences, convergences, the nuances. Why? Because you want to introduce complexity, not to complicate the research, but to make your research more complex. Complex, please read complex as in rich. Because if you don't bring in the complexity into it, complexity का मतलब ये नहीं है कि you make it so difficult for everybody else to understand. That's not what complexity is. Complexity is things that the average person does not even look for, does not read, does not understand, cannot identify. But the researcher brings that, pulls that from documents, pulls that from contracts, pulls that is where this research is so critical. And that's why it makes it more complicated. So it accounts for non-human elements such as animals, technology, information systems, information processes, etc. So in situational analysis, you can bring in the non-human, whereas in traditional grounded theory, we look for human aspects. Because if you're understanding the process that's occurring in an educational system, what is the process of recruiting people as doctors? What is the process of graduating, right, students through an economics course? What is the process of whatever, right? So you are dealing with, in situation of inquiry, you're dealing with non-human aspects also. And you also elements such as animals. Now you might wonder, animals in situation inquiry? Technology? What has the technology got to do with this situation of inquiry? Information systems. This is where it becomes more messy, more complex, more nuanced. Does anybody have anything to add on this discussion? Come on, don't be shy.
So am I audible?
Yes.
So what I think was that when I was just going through the first few pages of the book, so I got to look at a term called the ecological framework, which was also a part of situation of inquiry. So that is something that I found interesting as well, because most of the researchers do not take into consideration the aspect of ecology or the environment that we are a part of. So that most of the time remains excluded or is not taken into consideration. So I think this the inclusion of environment, which is also very important today for conservation and all the debate around the climate change and everything. So the inclusion of that is also very important. And I think that is what makes situational analysis a lot more complex, as you were mentioning earlier.
Yes,
so that
that's
aspect is
right.
something
Thank
that
you
was
for bringing that. Because how could you be looking at the social aspects of a policy without considering all of these environmental factors, even things like global warming that's happening, the things of factionalization that is happening in politics, you know, the populist approach versus the really democratic approach, the authoritarian approach versus the collaborative approach, right? If you don't understand all of those nuances, how can you examine a policy? And also to be able to say on the face of it, there is democratization. These in India also, like the policies are openly democratic and all that. But really, if you go dig deep down into the policy, you may find that there's authoritarianism there. Is it a really democratic process? Or is it one that is just democratic in name, And it's actually power driven. So another thing, Resham, was it Resham who spoke or Chester?
So it was, I spoke, Cheshta.
Chester. Okay. So Chester spoke, and you brought in the aspect of ecology because you read that. And thank you for bringing that. It tells me that at least you took some time to read that. So you bring in governance, you bring in social welfare, you bring in all of that aspect into that, global warming, the political climate, the geopolitical climate. You bring all of that in that because you want to be able to understand through this process of messiness, through this process of complexifying something, you're able to provide a very rich analysis of something, right? You don't want to leave anything on the table. So in this kind of thing, loosely speaking, everything goes. Everything is game. All right. So again, while it with its entire focus on the situation of inquiry, situational analysis is a significant departure from the traditional grounded theory, which we have already been talking about. So it's not the traditional grounded theory method, which focuses on certain things and leaves out other nuances. Situation of inquiry is empirically constructed by making three kinds of maps. Now, here is where mapping becomes a very critical strategy of doing situational inquiry. Right now, we are talking about what is situation of inquiry, but how do you go about doing the analysis? How do you go about really examining that situation? So it is empirically constructed by making three kinds of maps: situational maps, social worlds, arenas, and three positional maps. It uses analytical memos about each map. So memos, those of you that are involved in qualitative research, we keep memos. Memos are memorandums, right? Memory joggers, notes, field notes you've all heard of, right? When you're in the field, you're interviewing, you're jotting down things that otherwise you'll just forget. Some people make field notes on a recorder, personal recorder, right? And now with all of your smartphones, you can actually record voice notes, which is very good. You can actually record an entire, I don't know how long you can go, probably an entire interview on your smartphone with somebody, right? You don't have to carry a recorder now. Earlier you had to carry a recorder. Recorders are become obsolete. All of this other stuff is cameras are becoming more and more obsolete right now because such advanced cameras are in your phone that you can take such a beautiful picture without carrying a bulky camera with, right, Swati, with it hanging around your neck, right? And half the time your neck starts to pain if it's a heavy camera. Now I look at my camera, I'm thinking I've not used my Nikon camera for I don't know for how long because it's so heavy to carry, bulky. Now, of course, the pictures that you take, the capability of the camera is different. And I'm not saying that one is a substitute for the other, but if I have to take a picture on the fly, suddenly I see something, a bird sitting on a pole, and I'm really fascinated. I can immediately pull this out, take the picture and share it with the entire world. By the time I take the picture of the camera and then download the picture to my thing and share it with the world, so you see what information technology has done. So if that is such a powerful influence on policy today, especially policies, right? Social media has a huge impact on policies. So doesn't that become game for analysis? How is that impacting it? How is the disembodied nature of relationships impacting a policy? Right? Those that are being governed by certain policies and those that are reading about the governance of those policies. So it integrates a post-structural assumption with symbolic interactionism. Now I know I've used some heavy words here. So I wanted to understand what is post-structural. What is this thing that we call post-structure? Post is after. So there was a thing called structuralism, and there is a thing called post-structuralism. There was a thing called modernism, and there is a thing called meaning a construct called postmodernism, right? So what is post-structural? Anyone? Resham, go ahead.
So I think what we have read is post-structuralism as a movement, which sort of marked the shift from the usual ways in which we would conceive a thing. For example, the concept of signified was challenged by Derrida, and therefore the whole discussion and lecture on post-structuralism, and how again there is a play of differences, because in order to signify one thing, we cannot explain the definition of one thing without taking into consideration the other thing. So both the things are not exclusive in nature, rather than they are interconnected and tied to each other. So that is something that post-structuralism sort of thought of espousing through the movement and the medium is inclusivity and the play of meanings and play of words and rejection of this binary of signifier or signified.
Oh, good, good, good. So structuralism had its own meaning, that everything, it assumes that everything has to have a certain structure, a certain theory to explain that structure. Whereas post-structuralism, okay, and I'm reading this, it favors theory that is both built upon and rejects ideas established by structuralism. So can anybody tell me? Let me read it again, okay? Because it's important to understand. So post-structuralism as a doctrine favors theory, or is in favor of theory that both builds upon something and rejects something established by structuralism. Anyone? So if you could give me an example of that. Resham, go ahead.
So when I think of the way in which post-structuralism sort of rejects various ideas of structuralism is the rigidity that is associated with meanings and words that is found in the theory of structuralism. For example, the basic example that was given in the theory was when we say cow. So we have the image of a cow in our minds. That is the kind of rigidity of the signifier and signified concept that we have grown to associate things with certain meanings and certain words. On the other hand, how it takes forward the concept of structuralism is what it does is that it takes into consideration both the signifier and the signified, and it says that neither the signifier is the dominant one, nor is the signified the dominant one. So in literature, we have this debate of who is it, what is it that we consider more dominant, or something that has preceded one over the other, the debate between writing and reading. So what post-structuralism does when it sort of engages with the concept of structuralism and takes it forward is that it considers neither of them as dominant, as it considers neither one of them being dominant over the other. What it says is that both the things require both the faculties together. So the coexistence of two things is something that it takes the concepts that was earlier there, it rejects it in some ways, and yet it incorporates the very element that was the part of structuralism in the first place. So
Nicely done. Nicely done. Very nicely discussed. So I'm not going to dig that deeper into the ground, but so you understand structuralism and post-structuralism. So these are, we had assumptions about post-structuralism, right? It integrates that post-structuralist assumption with symbolic interactionism. What is symbolic interactionism? Anybody? There are two very important concepts in situational analysis: post-structuralism and symbolic interactionism. What is symbolic interactionism? It's a sociological theory. What is this thing we call symbolic interactionism? Symbolic.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
So
go
I'll
ahead.
get my laptop open. I'm just reading through it. Symbolic interactionism is theoretical perspective in sociology, just that addresses the manner in which society is generated and maintained through face-to-face, repeated, meaningful interactions among the individuals. So basically, it is interaction.
Yes, it is interactionism. Yes, it is interactionism, but using symbols.
Yes,
Very
the
symbolic. Symbolic comes from symbols.
symbols.
Symbols. So how symbols are the basis of social life. We are full of symbolism or symbolism. We don't even realize it. We go by symbols: the stop sign, the go sign, red light, green light, amber light, right? Danger signs, fire, right? We're surrounded by symbols. Our life is being shaped by symbols. It's given order by symbols. We try to make meaning of ourselves and about others through the use of symbols. So when you said, you're absolutely correct, when you read from your laptop, it is about how society is being created through symbolic interactionism, a sociological theory. It's a theoretical perspective. So enough of that. I just wanted to share that as a sprinkling, because I think you need to understand that at the root of this situational analysis are these two concepts. Okay. Now, situational analysis strategies. Okay. Let's look at these strategies that we use for situational analysis. And I'm not going to go into in-depth steps, but just please know that the arrows are flowing in both directions. It is not cyclical. It is not linear. It is not going counterclockwise, or it is going both clockwise and counterclockwise. But for the sake of discussion, as we do conduct a situational analysis, right, we start with a situational map. What is a situational map? It is the earliest design that you make as you start the analysis. A situational map is nothing more than what is the current situation that we find ourselves in. Because how else are you going to start the process of identifying, of analyzing, of interpreting certain theories, right? So it could, you, in that map, you put all the, if you consider every map to have dots, consider the dots. If you take a map of any place, there are dots, cities, villages, rivers, right? Roads, right? Highways, correct? All of that. So situational analysis contains all of the map. So it has the human, non-human, discursive, historical, symbolic, cultural, political aspects of the situation. So it is considered to be a a vessel, like a bucket in which you put all of this stuff in. It's kind of like a hopper in which you put all of this stuff in about that situation. And the situation is around a policy, right? So we are talking about situation around a policy. Okay. So once you are done that, you go into social world and social arenas. Now, having put it into situational maps, the human, non-human, discursive, historical, blah, 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 all of those aspects into this bucket, we go into this bucket. In this, we put the social actors and their arenas of construction with which they are engaged. So who are the social actors? So for instance, if you're looking at a certain policy, this will concern aspects of that policy, but this will contain the players. Who are the players? Who holds the power there? Who are the ones, who are the stakeholders? Who are the ones that are being affected or impacted by the policies? And who are the ones who are impacting that group of people? So social world, social arenas, social actors, as the word social tells you, right? So here the situational tells you the situation, here social, here positional. What is positional? The major positions taken and not taken. Now, guys, I want you to think of this, don't get confused. I want to think of this as any policy that you're analyzing. Any policy that you're analyzing is going to have situational factors, social world factors and arenas, and also positional factors. Who is holding positions within that? Or who is not taking a position within that? The discursive data includes interviews, observations, media discourse methods, websites, things of that nature, reports, contracts, agreements. Where pertaining to, because you're trying to find out who holds the, who wields the power and who's being impacted by that power. Because you want to understand the policy, you're going to shred this policy apart. You're trying to analyze what's working or not working about this policy. So you create what is known as a positional map. Okay. And I wanted to stop here with the time that we have remaining to do something that always turns out to be a very valuable exercise, right? It's kind of like almost like a debrief, a revisitation of where we have been together. We have been together for 8 hours now, at least those of you that have been here for all 4 sessions. Okay. It's a long time to be together. During this time, we've gotten to know your thoughts, gotten to know your opinions, how you articulate your thoughts, things of that nature. So this is a moment that I want to turn it over to you, and I'm going to ask Swati to facilitate this final segment of what happened for you. What was it like to be a part of this workshop? What did you learn? What could you have hoped to learn more of? Because it also helps us improve, right? It what were your takeaways from this? The time that you spent, the energy that you invested in this. You took time out of your evenings, and today you're taking time, or yesterday and today you took time out of your weekend. So thanks to you for doing that. But it's important for us to know, it's kind of like a phenomenological question. What was it like for you to have attended this workshop or this series of workshops? Okay, so who would like to go first? I'd like each and every one of you to share. It's going to be very helpful for us. So I'll turn it over to Swati to lead this segment. Go ahead, Swati.
Sure. So, Dr. Bell, I was thinking, I would love to hear everyone's thoughts about the entire course and their experience with it. But I also wanted to understand how they kind of interpreted or um, understood the session that we had in situational analysis today, and maybe we could have like a 5 minute discussion about how they think situational analysis can be relevant to policy analysis, because
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
us to be able to connect the two things and
Hmm.
see why and how situational analysis can contribute to policy analysis that any of our participants are going to be doing in the future.
Very good. So just to piggyback on
I,
what you just said, so you discussed, you had a very nice segment you took facilitated yesterday on interpretative policy analysis. So is there any potential to integrate interpretative
mhm,
policy analysis with situation analysis, maybe to
mhm,
create like a
yeah.
hybrid method, right? To look at both, because it's not that one size fits all, right? There are so many
Yeah,
complexities in this. So yeah, so that's a great thought. So yeah,
so
go for it.
just any ideas, I'd love to hear from everyone in the room about how you think we can use situational analysis in, any interpretive policy analysis that we're doing. If you want, use the example of the case study that we had yesterday, but just any thoughts off the top of your head. We would love to hear those. Anyone? You guys know that if no one speaks, I like to pick out people. So I will resort to doing that. Great. Kritika, thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Sure, ma'am. Um, Ma'am, what I felt like going through all of these sessions is like whenever I'm thinking of applying for any policy related job, I somehow in the back of my mind, I have this notion that, or sometimes I myself self doubt myself that being a qualitative researcher coming from social science background, I might not be able to contribute much because that already scares me. Numbers and stats already scare me. And but with this few sessions that I have gone through or I have attended, I can at least be confident about myself that I also might have something to contribute in policy making and policy research. I'm thankful for this class so that at least I have this much confidence. Of course, I need to explore more, but yeah, that's there now. And Mama, I want to highlight more on this because I come from Northeast, and in the past, also in different sessions, I think we have spoken a lot about land conflict issue. Land conflict issue in throughout we have this issue throughout our country, and in Northeast, it's a very big issue due to illegal migrants. And I find this situation analysis strategy could be worked out in our policy because we have this eviction policies, NRC, and all of that. So when we look, when I just see these three diagrams displayed in the screen, I somehow feel that this policy of eviction or illegal migrant and NRC is very much we could actually utilize it, we can actually, it's quite relevant to understand the policy making which is happening in Assam right now. Because when we look into the language and the objects and all of the things that we, the constitute making of the policy, the general notion of people here is like the person who is wearing a skull cap or is carrying himself in a lungi or what, however the person portrays himself in public, this has become the symbolic gestures of how you will locate an outsider from the region. And of course,
Wow.
when we also look at and also when we look at the ecology, these people are actually living in the chars. Now, I don't know if you have heard about this term chars. These are riverine islands, actually constructed in the bank of the Brahmaputra. So they are already
Wow.
at the margins geographically, socially,
Ah.
and they are already very marginalized because they are already ostracized from the society. They are mostly employed as laborers. So they don't have any social capital, nothing of sort, and they're already, you can understand the social world around them. They are, and whenever there is erosion, soil erosion, and there is floods, which is very rampant in Northeast India, their houses are thrown away and they have nothing to rely upon. So they're already at the margins, and then the policies which come around, the eviction, because of they want, the government wants this land back because they think they can do it for organic farming. So all of the policy and everything that comes in making, I think all of the things that we discuss about, I think I can go back and reflect upon how actually these are working in the policy making in our region. So yes, that's what I have to say about.
Um, so, Kritika, actually, and Dr. Hill, I wanted to address the first point that she was saying about being a qualitative researcher and hesitating applying for policy jobs. So, Kritika, I have been a part of like two World Bank funded RCT studies, and you know RCT studies are usually very positivist and very quantitative in nature, and yet right now the way RGP studies are done, it is a very hybrid, it's a mixed methods approach, and interviews and observations and participatory action research played a huge role in the RCT studies that I was a part of. They were kind of like the bedrock of the study that we were doing. Of course, the quantitative data, the indicators, all of that baseline, midline, endline, all of that was really important, but qualitative data kind of made the research so much more richer. So I really don't think you should worry about that. There is a lot of scope, especially if you are able to kind of build some skill, quantitative research skills as well to kind of add to your profile. There is sort of the sky's the limit as to where you can go with qualitative research skills.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, yeah. I look forward to it. Yeah.
Great job. That was a very nice way to put across something that is so complicated and complex. So I applaud you for that, Kritika. That was a very great job. Thank you.
Can we hear from someone else now? Kashish, what do you think?
Ma'am, I think that situational analysis can be used when we are analyzing the risk and benefits of a policy. Uh, this can be supplemented by SWOT analysis of a supposed policy. So, for instance, we did a policy yesterday. In that, there were certain risk and benefits involved. So, if you're using situational analysis, we get the policy problem, that is through the situational maps. The social world or arenas section is covered when we are talking about the stakeholders, that is the teachers involved, the teacher training process involved, and also how the kids were impacted. And then the positioning map. So I think if situational analysis and SWOT analysis are done together, then the interpretative on policy analysis would be helpful for that.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
Interesting. I did not even think about the SWOT part. That's great. The strengths,
and
opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. Yeah, that's good.
I really like how she's kind of thought through what the situational map or the social world arena map would look like
Yeah.
in the dissertation. And I mean, she has a really good example. So, Kashish, thank you for that.
And what was it like for you to attend these workshops, Kashish?
So I'm just a bachelor student. I'm in my third year only, and my plans for my masters was to basically explore the world of public policy only. And this is my first public policy course that I've attended.
Wow.
Before the course, I was very anxious about that. How will I get into a master's program, because I don't know anything about it, nor do I have a work experience. But I think this course really helped me understand the basics of it, if not the whole thing, at least the qualitative aspect of it. And it actually made me confident that if I have to speak to someone about it, or if I'm at a debate or something, I can actually talk about it. So I really like to thank Anil sir and Swati ma'am for that. It
Oh,
was
great.
really a
Thank you.
wonderful experience for me.
It was our pleasure to have you, young lady. And don't just say, oh, I'm only in my bachelor's. No, there are a lot of people who did not even get that far. You're one of the blessed few that have the opportunity, both financially and professionally and emotionally, to go even that far. And then to go farther in your journey to do a master's in public policy. I applaud you for it. Great job. And keep up the great work.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Who's next?
Yeah, can we
If you
hear
don't
from
go
someone
next,
else about their experiences?
if you don't go next, Swati is coming after you.
I am going to. I've been doing that. I will call out your name. I'll put you on the spot. Sanjay, what about you? How I know you missed quite a bit of today's session, but would you want to share with us your experience with the entire course? What are you taking away? And if you want to also tell us what you think we can do better, that would also be really helpful. Sanjay?
Maybe Sanjay is having
Sanjay,
a
can
problem
you
with his
hear us?
audio.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe they're having a
Sanjay,
problem
what
with his
about
audio.
you? Yeah, we'll move to the next person, and Sanjay, when he gets his
Yeah,
connection back, can.
Hello.
yeah.
Hi,
Hello.
Sukha.
Who's this?
Hi. Sukhada here.
Yes, go ahead, Sukada.
Hi, sir. So currently I am working in the M&A field at Deloitte. So I've been working there for the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just completed my LLP as well in August only. And I
Wow.
was actually looking for something new because I realized that this consulting world is not for me because it's very uh, I don't know, it was a little difficult for me to cope up with the kind of pressure they have, and I'm still 23, so that was a lot of pressure for me. Um, and then I started reading up for other options and, you know, policy analysis and research regarding the policy making and everything came up while I was looking. And this was the first course that I am attending, and I think it helped me, uh, understand that yes, I want to work in this field. And basis that I have started looking for master's courses abroad and in India, so that I can uh, like officially shift to this field. And I'm really glad that I attended this entire course, and it was really insightful. And even though I did not have much to contribute, I learned a lot, and I'm taking away a lot of knowledge from all of you. And I really would like to thank you, Swati, and everybody else who everybody here is just so brilliant and has such amazing opinions and really great ideas. It was really enlightening for me. So I would like to thank everyone for that.
Mm. Great. We thank you for your participation.
Hello,
Who
can I go next?
Yeah.
Now, please go ahead.
Hello, hi. So, like I said, I'm coming from public health background. I'm pursuing a master's in the same. So, right now, attending this course has given me a perspective to how to use the strengths and benefits in healthcare system. Like, for example, situation analysis. How can we use it in the health sector? So that gave me that, because I don't have much experience in this, but this course has actually, made me read about it further. And how the stakeholders in public health can involve in decision making and all that. Like I got some basic idea about that. And today's session about situation analysis has instigated more, has made me more curious about how can it be applied in healthcare system particularly. And I would really like to thank, because it was a very interactive session. It wasn't boring at all, because usually when I have attended other e-certificate courses online virtually, which was pretty much, I usually never used to listen, but here I was more curious, interested in knowing knowing more about the same. Thank you so much, sir,
Mm-hmm.
and Swati ma'am.
Oh, of course. You're very welcome.
I think Resham and Cheshta have raised their hands.
Go ahead.
Yes. I think when I heard Kritika's point, so I was thinking of building up. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So when I heard Kritika's point, I think I also had a little bit of bias regarding the understanding of qualitative and quantitative research. So I thought that maybe I lack the positivist approach, so I might not be the person who would be an ideal candidate for a career in public policy. And adding on to the point that when she talked about the specificities in her region, I was thinking about the community that I'm a part of. So I'm a Sindhi. So I think a community that has historically bore the brunt of partition and we still see the mental, physical, emotional consequences of it even after 70 years of partition of India and Pakistan. So I think the various strategies that we have talked about in situational analysis can also be taken into consideration when we try to maintain international relations with a country which is supposedly now referred to as the other. And one more thing that I was also thinking of is that what's happening to the minority in our country is precisely what's happening to the minority on the other side of the border. So this mirroring of sorts is something that can be discussed and talked about. And this is wherein the concept of what I learned throughout the course is maintaining relations with people or taking into consideration emotional aspects as well. That is something which can solve this problem, which has had long consequences, and an interaction would be fruitful. As far as the course is concerned, I really like the interaction of it. And the one thing that I think that we could have probably done is, if we had a longer session, that we could have had one assignment or one written takeaway of what we learned from the course, so that each person's perspective would have helped all of us understand that what is it that we could have done better, or what is it that we could have probably added to our knowledge throughout the course. Otherwise it was very interactive, and as someone said, it wasn't boring at all.
Good. Good.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much, ma'am.
Yeah, and that's a really good suggestion. And I think, Dr. Behel, we will definitely kind of seriously consider this because,
Yes,
um,
yes.
yeah, it's such a valuable suggestion. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're also a work in progress. It's not that this is the end of the journey. For us, this is the beginning of the
Mhm.
journey. So anything that we can do to tweak it, modify it, make it more enriched, as far as the curriculum is concerned, the content, we'll definitely, Swati and I'll put our heads together. So
Mhm.
whenever we have the next course next year or something, we'll work on those suggestions.
Mhm. All right, sir, thank you so much.
So last but not least, Chesta and Reshmi, and of course Tanmay. Tanmay has, whoever wants to go first can go.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to say that this has been a very enriching experience for me. I've always been very interested in the concept of public policy, but even though I was closely integrated for 5 years with the topic, I mean, not with public policy, but something very near to it. as a law student. So, but unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to directly engage myself with anything of the sort. So I was really looking forward to this course, and I'm really happy that it has been very enriching, and it has not been confined in any sense. There have been talks of all dimensions. Yesterday we talked about so many different ideas. We talked about mental health. We have talked about ecology and environment. We talked about social movements. So it has been really nice, and the experiences and the interpretations of different participants was also very relevant, not only in this course but in terms of life experiences. It was very nice, and currently I'm looking forward to pursue an LLM abroad, but might as well given the opportunity, and if I make up my mind, I might also go ahead with a master's in public policy. So it has been that good that it has been, sort of widening the horizon kind of experience for me. So thank you all for that.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I think we have time to take one more person, right, Dr. Behel? We can
Yeah, we can
accommodate a
quickly
few
go.
more.
Yeah, if we could just have a quick go around, because I also have to jump off for another conference in a few minutes. But Resham and Chester could speak either together or just as one. That's okay.
I think they just did before Tanmay.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have missed it then. Oh, okay. So they've both done it. Okay, great, terrific. So I has everybody has done it, right? Then
Yeah, I think we have Sanjay left, but yeah, he hasn't. I think he has issues with the internet, so we haven't heard from him. He
okay.
hasn't
And
unmuted
Devendra,
himself.
how about Devendra?
Yeah, we haven't heard from Devinder. Devinder, can you hear us? No, I think it's the same situation for him as well. I don't think he's.
Can I go? I'm
Hi,
not sure
Lakshmi.
if
Yes,
I'm audible though.
yes, you
Hi.
are. Please go ahead.
Yeah, and please excuse the chatter in the background. Also, I don't think I have a good enough answer for the specific question that you posed, since I wasn't able to go through today's reading, but I would like to talk about something that's not quite related to policy though. I currently work for a network-based, agenda-driven organization, which is still in its nascent stage, I would say. And I joined recently, and I've been struggling to understand why what has been written in the documents, which were prepared during the early days of inception of the organization, that is, I think, perhaps in August last year. Um, um, they doesn't really reflect in the work or what we prioritize while taking certain decisions. For example, in our guiding principles, we talk about women farmers as well as small and marginal farmers, and we did not really do much to focus more on these stakeholders. Now, as we talked a lot about meanings, both explicit and hidden, and interpretation of oral communication, written documents,
Are you able
etc.,
to
I
connect?
feel.
What happened?
Wait, I don't know. Dad's here.
No.
Sorry, Lakshmi. Just please go ahead.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so I was saying, I feel I could now see where these inconsistencies in the functioning of the organization I'm working for is stemming from. And I believe policy making and implementation of the policy, those environments can be comparable, if not quite similar to this. So, and I'm really looking forward to applying what I learned in a more policy related environment.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And also, I mean, it goes to show that IPA and also situational analysis can also be applied to your day-to-day life. You can apply it to better understand the world around you as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you. We haven't really heard, I think, a lot from you. But it was great to hear your perspective on this.
Thank you, Swati.
Is there anyone who wants to share, or so? Dr. Vihil, I think we are done with everyone here except for Sanjay. So maybe we can. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So, do you want to say anything closing, Swati, before I just close out the meeting?
No, I was telling everyone that it's been such a wonderful time, hearing everyone's perspective on this. Because like
Hmm.
you've said, you and I are also here to learn from all the people. So their experience
Yes.
on the ground, their experience with the ground reality also kind of helps us understand a lot of these concepts, these theoretical concepts better.
Hmm.
And like, I was so happy to be able to meet everyone here. Yeah, and yeah, at the end, in case anyone wants to reach out regarding anything, if you want to have a conversation, if you have questions about anything, please feel free to do that. You have my email address, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. So I would love to chat with you outside the sessions also.
Yes. And of course, hearty thanks to you, Swati, for being my partner in this crime. Partners in
Thank you for
crime.
the
I'm
opportunity.
saying it. I'm saying it facetiously. Partners in crime.
Yeah.
But we both, as you may have guessed, that we both are also learners like you all. So it's not as though we come from a position of strength or power or authority. We are in a lifelong journey. I can certainly speak for myself, and I think I could speak partially for Swati too, that this is a lifelong journey. We are every time. This is just a, a milestone, a stop where we meet certain people that are getting on the bus, and then the bus becomes bigger and bigger and bigger with more perspectives, more journeys to do together. So I have thoroughly enjoyed both putting this together, and of course, hearing your voices. And I'll tell you, the brilliance and the eloquence with which some of you young ladies have shared. Actually, I said to myself, as you were talking, I was thinking, wow, at 23, was I able to articulate my thoughts in this way? And I was, to be honest with you, quite embarrassed and ashamed that the answer came to me that probably not. Of course, you live and work and study in a different day and age. But even with that said, you young ladies have such a tremendous amount of emotional and intestinal fortitude that it's just mind-boggling to me. And the way you articulate your thoughts, the clarity with which you have a purpose and a mission in life, it's so heartening, it's so heartwarming to me to see this. It's really, I am so emotionally overwhelmed that we had in our midst so many wonderful people. Of course, I'm not only just talking about the young ladies, I'm also talking about the young men here. We didn't have many, but we had a few who have Tanmay and Sanjay and Devendra and everybody else. And so it's just been a marvelous experience, and I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for taking the time out of your busy evenings to to be with us together and to share and to learn with us. So thanks all, and I will be reaching out to my admin to prepare some certificates, digital certificates of participation, which you'll have them in about a week or 10 days. We should have them all done. We'll send them to you via email to everybody. And like Swati said, if you need to reach out to me or to Swati or to both, and you have any individual situation, individual question about the readings, about the course, feel free. And just so you all know that we are going to keep the online folder of readings and resources open for 30 days. So you have a full month to go ahead and download any material, etc. you have. We didn't want to rush you and say the folder was closed tomorrow or would be closed tomorrow. So go ahead, enjoy the folder. I'll put in some other documents also that I can find, and let the learning continue. Take care. Good luck to you all, and thanks again. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care, Swati. Bye.
Bye. Bye. See ya.